The Vorkarian boarding party froze in horrified awe as the cryo chamber hissed open, revealing the human super soldier within, eyes snapping open with lethal focus. Commander Volar should have heeded the warnings of his subordinates and left the chamber sealed. But ambition and curiosity drove him to revive the sole occupant of the derelict human ship they had discovered adrift. As the human Brian Griffin stumbled out, Volar saw only opportunity before him. The chance to interrogate this prime specimen about human military secrets and technological advantages. With the right information, Volar could overthrow his rivals and seize control of the Vorkarian hegemony. But as Brian regained his senses, he took in the alien faces around him, and his special forces training kicked in. He was behind enemy lines with no idea how much time had passed. If the Vorkarians were boarding human ships, then the situation could already be dire. He needed to escape, get back to human space and warn of this new alien threat, even if he had to fight through the entire enemy crew to do it. Volar's questions were met with stony silence and fierce defiance. He had his guards beat the human, trying to break his will. But Brian endured, biding his time. He would only get one chance at this. The Vorkarians thought him subdued as he was dragged to a cell. The cold steel of the alien manacles bit into his wrists. All of humanity was at stake. If Brian failed, there would be nothing to stop the Vorkarians from taking more humans, extracting critical intel to use against them. He had to succeed, or humanity's end would be on his hands. As the cell door locked behind him, Brian was already searching for weaknesses to exploit, mapping the alien ship in his mind. The Vorkarians would soon learn the resilience of the human spirit and the price for underestimating it. In the cold confines of the holding cell, Brian hung his head, the picture of a broken man. His body slumped against the wall, eyes downcast. The Vorkarian guards sneered at the once defiant human, now seemingly cowed by their ruthless interrogation. Volar strode into the cell, confident that he had finally broken the human spirit. He loomed over Brian, ready to extract the information he sought. But as Volar opened his mouth to speak, Brian exploded into action. His feigned weakness vanished in an instant as he lashed out with a devastating blow, catching Volar off guard. The Vorkarian commander stumbled back, stunned by the human's sudden ferocity. Brian pressed his advantage, his enhanced strength making quick work of the guards. In a blur of motion, he disarmed them and held Volar in a chokehold, a stolen plasma rifle pressed against the alien's skull. "Take me to the armory now," Brian growled, his voice low and menacing. "And if you even think about double-crossing me, I'll paint the walls with your brains." Volar, realizing the gravity of his error, nodded stiffly. He led Brian through the ship's corridors, the human's grip never loosening. As they entered the armory, Brian's eyes widened at the array of advanced Vorkarian weaponry. He quickly armed himself, donning a sleek battlesuit that molded to his muscular frame. With Volar still his hostage, Brian began to navigate the ship, his senses on high alert. Vorkarian crew members attempted to block his path, but Brian's Special Forces training proved more than a match for their efforts. He engaged in brutal close-quarters combat, his movements fluid and precise as he neutralized each threat with ruthless efficiency. Volar watched in a mix of anger and reluctant admiration as the human tore through his crew. He probed for weaknesses, trying to find a way to regain control of the situation. But Brian remained focused, his mind set on his singular goal of escape and warning Earth. As they fought their way through the ship, Brian stumbled upon a chilling discovery. The Vorkarians had been gathering intelligence on Earth, studying human weaknesses and planning for an invasion. The stakes had never been higher. If Brian failed, humanity's fate would be sealed. With renewed determination, Brian battled his way to the hangar bay. He forced Volar into a shuttle at gunpoint, demanding the alien pilot the craft. Volar, seeing no alternative, complied. The shuttle blasted out of the hangar, Brian's heart pounding as they hurtled into the vast expanse of space, the Vorkarian ship growing smaller behind them. The stolen shuttle rocketed through the void of space, Vorkarian fighters hot on its tail. Green plasma bolts sizzled past the viewport as Vola weaved the craft through a dizzying array of evasive maneuvers. Brian, hunched over the weapons console, returned fire with a steady barrage of searing energy beams. "I can't shake them," Vola hissed, his clawed hands deftly manipulating the shuttle's controls. "We need to find a way to lose them, or we're dead." Brian gritted his teeth, his eyes locked on the targeting display. "Keep flying, I'll handle the shooting." The human's fingers danced across the console, directing the shuttle's guns with pinpoint precision. One by one, the pursuing fighters erupted into fiery balls of debris as Brian's shots found their mark. Vola glanced over at his unlikely ally, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Not bad for a primitive species. Brian smirked, never taking his gaze off the display. Primitive, we'll see about that. As the chase wore on, the two began to fall into a rhythm. Vola's piloting skills kept the shuttle just out of reach of the Vorkarian fighters, while Brian's combat experience proved invaluable in whittling down their numbers. In the heat of battle, Brian found himself questioning his preconceptions about the Vorkarians. Vola's dedication to their survival, his skill and bravery in the face of overwhelming odds, suggested that perhaps not all of his kind were the ruthless invaders he had believed them to be. Vola, too, found his perceptions shifting. The human's quick thinking and resourcefulness, his unwavering determination in the face of certain death, belied the notion that his species were mere primitives. A sudden blast rocked the shuttle, alarms blaring as red lights flooded the cockpit. Vola cursed, struggling to keep the craft under control. "We're hit. Main engines down. We need to set down somewhere for repairs." Brian scanned the star maps, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There, an uncharted planet just a few clicks away. It's our only shot." Vola nodded grimly, angling the shuttle towards the distant world. They hit the atmosphere hard, the craft shuddering as it plummeted towards the surface. With a bone-jarring impact, they crashed into the barren, rocky terrain. Smoke poured from the shuttle's ruined engines as Brian and Vola stumbled out, their faces grim. The planet's harsh, unforgiving landscape stretched out before them, a desolate expanse of jagged cliffs and churning dust storms. A piercing shriek split the air, sending chills down their spines. From the shadows of a nearby crevasse, a monstrous creature emerged, its razor-sharp claws glinting in the dim light. Vola's eyes widened in recognition. "A Craxian Ripper apex predator. We're in its territory now." Brian unslung his rifle, his jaw set with determination. "Then we'll just have to show it who the real apex predators are." As the creature charged, Brian and Vola stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to face this new threat together. Their survival, and the fate of both their species, would depend on their ability to put aside their differences and fight as one. As the stolen Vorkarian shuttle hurtled through the void, a distress signal crackled over the comms. Brian's eyes narrowed as he deciphered the message: a human colony under siege by Vorkarian forces. "We have to help them," Brian declared, his voice steel. Vola hesitated, torn between his growing respect for Brian and his ingrained loyalty to his own kind. But seeing the resolve in the human's eyes, he relented. "Very well. But we must be cautious." The shuttle dropped out of warp, the beleaguered colony filling the viewport. Flames engulfed settlements as Vorkarian soldiers rampaged, civilians fleeing in panic. Brian's grip tightened on the controls, rage simmering beneath his skin. He landed hard, leaping out with Vorkarian weapons bristling. Plasma bolts seared the air as he charged into the fray, his enhanced reflexes and brutal training a devastating combination. Vorkarian soldiers fell before his onslaught, unable to match his speed and ferocity. In the shuttle, Vola's claws danced over the console, jamming enemy comms and targeting command units with surgical precision. His support gave Brian the edge, the tide slowly turning. Amidst the chaos, a Vorkarian commander emerged, his eyes cold and calculating. He engaged Brian in a vicious duel, their strength and skill evenly matched. Blows rained down like hammer strikes, neither giving quarter. As they clashed, Vola made a chilling discovery. This attack was merely the prelude to a full Vorkarian invasion of human space. His people meant to conquer and subjugate, with this colony the first domino to fall. Anguish tore at Vola. To aid the humans was to betray his kind, yet could he stand idle while innocents died? In that moment, he made his choice. Volar leapt from the shuttle, racing to join Brian on the front lines. The humans started at his arrival, then grinned fiercely. Side by side they fought, Vorkarian and human, their combined might rallying the beleaguered colonists. What began as a rout became a counterattack, the colonists surging forward with newfound determination. Vorkarian lines buckled and broke as Brian and Vola led the charge, an unstoppable force. The Vorkarians fled, their first thrust blunted. The colonists cheered their saviors, but Brian and Vola had no time to bask in the victory. A new transmission drained the blood from their faces. The Vorkarian Empire had declared total war against humanity. This colony was just the first strike. As Brian and Volar exchanged a heavy look, they knew their battle was just beginning. A powerful alliance forged in the crucible of combat, they set forth to carry word of the coming storm, determined to rally humanity's defenses before it was too late. Brian and Vola burst into the command center of Earth's orbital defense network, their faces grim and desperate. Brian slammed a data drive onto the table, his voice cracking with urgency. "The Vorkarians are coming. A full-scale invasion, we have proof." The human generals eyed Vola with suspicion, their hands twitching towards their sidearms. "And why should we trust this Vorkarian turncoat?" one sneered. Brian stepped forward, his eyes alight with conviction. "Because he risked everything to warn us. We fought together, bled together. Volar is on our side." But the generals remained unconvinced, mired in bureaucracy and mistrust. Brian's frustration boiled over. He couldn't let their short-sightedness doom humanity. "Fine, we'll stop this invasion ourselves." Brian stormed out, Vola close behind. They gathered a squad of elite soldiers, men and women Brian had served with, who trusted his word without question. The plan was daring, perhaps even suicidal. They would infiltrate the Vorkarian homeworld, strike at the heart of the Empire, cut off the head, and the body would wither. But as they made their approach, disaster struck. A traitor in their midst, a human soldier secretly loyal to the Vorkarians, sabotaged their stealth systems. Alarms blared as they were dragged into a hangar by tractor beams, surrounded by a legion of Vorkarian warriors. Beaten, broken, they were hauled before the Vorkarian Emperor himself. Brian's blood ran cold as he recognized Volar's features in the imperial visage. The Emperor turned to his son, his voice a rumbling purr. "Vola, my wayward child, redeem yourself. Execute this human filth and all will be forgiven." Volar hesitated, torn between blood and bond. Brian saw the indecision in his friend's eyes, the weight of an impossible choice. In that moment of hesitation, Brian acted. He lunged forward, breaking free of his restraints with a burst of desperate strength. He launched himself at the Emperor, a battle cry tearing from his throat. Chaos erupted, the throne room devolving into a maelstrom of flashing blades and searing plasma. Brian danced through the melee, his movements fluid and deadly, Vorkarian guards falling before him. But it was Vola who turned the tide. Seeing Brian's selfless courage, his unwavering devotion to what was right, Vola made his choice. He sprang to Brian's side, his own blade carving a path through his former comrades. Together they fought, human and Vorkarian brother warriors against a corrupt empire. They battled their way to the Emperor, the embodiment of Vorkarian cruelty and avarice. The Emperor's personal guards were deadly, veteran killers honed to lethal perfection. Brian and Vola fought with desperate skill, their very survival at stake, but for every guard they cut down, another seemed to take its place. In a final desperate gambit, Vola launched himself at his father, his blade aimed at the tyrant's black heart, but the Emperor was too quick, his own sword lashing out in a lethal riposte. Time seemed to slow as Vola staggered back, his lifeblood pouring from a grievous wound. Brian screamed in denial, hacking his way through to his fallen friend. As Vola lay dying, he grabbed Brian's hand, his voice a rasping whisper. "Finish this, lead your people. Save both our worlds." With a final, shuddering breath, Vola slipped away. Brian, tears cutting through the grime on his face, cradled his friend's body, his grief turning to icy resolve. He carved a path of destruction through the palace, Vola's sacrifice fueling his every blow. He would not let his friend's death be in vain. Brian managed to escape, stealing a Vorkarian ship and plotting a desperate course back to human space. He carried with him the knowledge to defeat the coming invasion, paid for with Vola's life. As he sat in the pilot's seat, stars streaking past, Brian made a silent vow. He would be the leader humanity needed. He would take the fight to the Vorkarians, for the sake of his species, and in honor of the friend who had given everything for him. Brian's grip tightened on the controls as Earth loomed before him, his eyes hard with determination. The Vorkarians were coming, and he would be ready for them. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.